Well, good afternoon. This is Houndog Steve, hoping you're having a great afternoon. And as you can see, we are coming to the end of the season. It is the 27th of October, and I've basically done my last clean-up around the property and the garden, and that will be it until next springtime, pretty much. There's still a few things going on in the greenhouse, but anyway, let's go take a little look, and we'll see what's happening. Okie dokie, here we go. There you go, the trailer's all loaded up and ready to go down to the dump tomorrow morning, first thing. And that will be the last dump run for the year. And so my driveway is now perfectly clear for the snowblower. Now it's looking like that tree has just about had it. I suspect that'll be coming down in the wintertime when the frost is in the ground. It was a very dry year this year, and it was very hard on all of the trees. Now I decided to add a couple of bird feeders to the front of my greenhouse there, because that is actually a pretty difficult wall for squirrels to scale, and so the birds can actually get the seeds for winter. And also it's a great view from the back window, so I can actually see what birds are coming in and utilizing my bird feeders. Yeah, I kind of like that addition. And let's go in the greenhouse, take a little peek around there, see what's happening. Actually, a lot of the watering is being done just by condensation coming off the roof. But the lettuce are indeed coming on. And I came in here the other day, and it must have been about 9 degrees, maybe 10 degrees outside. And in here it was 28 degrees. That's centigrade, by the way. Anyway, these tomato plants have really held up pretty well. And as you can see, there's still some tomatoes on there. And the temperature in here right now is 12 degrees. Now it does take a little longer for things to ripen up and to grow in these temperatures. It's because it's not like the summertime, but things will grow, and these tomatoes will end up ripening, and so I'll have a few fresh tomatoes into November. They're doing a little better since they got this back door on, or these two screen windows. It's kind of neat because I can slide those windows open if it gets a little too hot in here in the springtime. But this looks very much like it got touched by the frost being close to the door. Still have peppers. I don't know if you can see there's some peppers turning red. And there. And still flowering, look at that. Tomatoes tucked in behind, and there's a nice red pepper under there too. I think I'll have that for supper. Very nice. So anyway, I've been very pleased this year with the garden. It's been incredibly productive, and I'm settling into the routine now of having the greenhouse, and no, it's all been very, very enjoyable and successful. I always think it's kind of interesting watching the full cycle of nature, with the putting a seed in the ground and growing a plant, and letting it reach flowering, and then watching it die and go back into the ground. It just sort of reminds us of the natural cycles of nature, of which we are all part. And I did actually get one raspberry off there. You can see where I pull it off. Whether those will ripen up yet, I have no idea, but I'm surprised they haven't been touched by the frost. And they are actually, I found out, a yellow raspberry. Very tasty too. There's quite a few buds there on this cherry tree, so I'm looking forward to quite a few more cherries next year. And I'm going to have to find a way to cover that, because I'll tell you, it didn't take long for the birds to get into those cherries. Now, one thing that you want to make sure of in the wintertime, if you have some of these barrels and you freeze up, as we do in Canada, you want to drain all of them so you don't burst the barrel. I actually didn't drain it one year, I think it's 3/4, and you can see how it bowed out the metal casing there around the plastic. It is absolutely unbelievable, the power of expanding ice. And always keep your gardening tools out to the last minute. You never quite know how the weather's going to go. But yeah, flip those barrels upside down. Morning glories are all gone. This work will be finished in the springtime now. I'm starting to move inside this winter. I have a kitchen to work on. And I have my living room to put back together again after I had it painted. Now, someone told me to save all of my nettle seeds, which I've done. I picked the biggest and the best, and they're drying in my sun porch. Now, the last things I may plant this winter, or before winter hits, is garlic. I'm just deciding where exactly I'm going to put those. But the dill is still growing, and the cilantro is still growing. Lemon balm, mints. I guess it must be the volatile oils in these herbs that make them so hardy against frost. But yeah, I think I may put my garlic in these two beds here. There'll be just enough garlic to get me through the year. Yeah, I'll be pulling these turnips shortly, and I think I'm going to learn how to wax them. Everyone has told me that's the best way to store turnips, so I'll pull the biggest and melt some wax and preserve them for the winter. Now these beets, however, I imagine I will be eating fairly shortly. They're all a good size, and I think they've pretty much stopped growing. But you know, I really am absolutely staggered at how much food that you can get out of a reasonably small garden, and you know, you can keep on eating year round. Raspberries all going to bed, and I can't tell you how wonderful these carrots taste. Yes, these are an ornamental coloured carrot. There's white, there's red, and natural coloured carrots. I still prefer the taste of the orange, but yep, these white ones, now the frost has hit them a couple of times, they are tasting pretty sweet. And of course here we have the never-ending kale. Look at that. You'd think it was midsummer, wouldn't you? But all of these plants just love this kind of fall weather. They can stand some frosts, probably down to -5 or -8 centigrade. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how far we can go into the fall with these. As I say, they're calling for snow for Halloween, 31st of October. Yeah, I did get started on the other side here, and I've transplanted a whole bunch of the bee balm for next year. And now, another thing I should mention about these sunflowers, when you leave them like this, there is always a certain number of seeds just fall on the ground, and all of these plants reseed themselves naturally now. I never know exactly where they're going to grow, but I know I'm going to get some of these come up in the springtime, and you can also eat them as an early sprout. Sunflower sprouts are wonderful and full of nourishment, lots of vitamins, and of course, if there ever is an issue with growing food because the weather is too inclement, you can always sprout indoors. Even with weather like this, even with a completely overcast sky, you can still sprout and get all of the benefits of the vitamins and minerals from greens, even though you can't grow outside. And that is it's a handy thing to have around, a bunch of sprouting seeds and a sprouting jar. Anyway, I find in wintertime it's an absolute godsend because I do love my greens. I'm not a vegan, I'm what they call an omnivore, but I don't eat a whole heck of a lot of meat, but I do eat meat for protein. I would say, well, when you see my weekly food purchases, I would say it would be about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Vegetables, grains, and meat protein. I eat more chicken and fish than beef, and when I eat beef, I eat tenderloin because I don't want any fat on my meat, or a limited amount of fat. And tenderloin, although it's expensive, it's all meat. There's no bone, there's no gristle, and you will have a great steak. So I hope I haven't disturbed any of my vegan listeners, but I think that being an omnivore is just fine. My beef that I buy comes from a local butcher shop, so I know exactly how it is raised. And these cows come from a mixed farming operation that has a few pigs and a few cows, a few chickens that run the fields and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know if you can see there, but there's another little of my winter seed visitors. The chippy's on the sunflower. And that means, my friends, that little chippy is going to have a great winter. So, as I say, things are settling down for winter, and I absolutely love this time of year between the end of summer and the winter solstice. And that, of course, is a high point for me because that's the shortest day of the year. 3 days later, the days start getting longer. Oh, hi. I'm just sitting here in the greenhouse contemplating. It is such a wonderful place to just sit and re-energize and refocus your thoughts. And what I'm thinking about is that I think this winter we are moving into the perfect storm for societal disruption. One of the biggest things that's happened this year is, as we've been talking about for a while now, is crop destruction because of weather related issues, and food prices have gone up 18% in this year alone. We have had a carbon tax, which again has impacted just about everything, but including food prices, energy costs. So if we have a long winter, and as I say, we're going into November, and so there's November, December, January, February, March, April, May. That is getting on for 6 months of cold heating weather. And if this year is as cold as they say it's going to be, that is going to take a heavy toll. Property taxes are going through the roof. Certainly in the city of Quarter Lakes where I live, property taxes have been going up at a steady rate of between 2 and 3%. And if you add in the MPAC adjustments, this is the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and they always increase the value of your home. And when you tie those two things in together, you know, your property taxes are doubling roughly every 10 to 11 years. So there is a sense of frustration there, a sense of helplessness, and unfortunately this is being channeled via the media, of course, into anger and frustration at each other. Now in Canada we've just been through a very divisive election between the Liberals, Conservatives, NDP and Green Party. The Liberals have lost their majority, they're now a minority government, and so they're going to have to pair off with one of the other parties to be able to guarantee that they can pass any legislation. And the natural choice would be the NDP, the New Democratic Party, and so it is going to be basically a spendathon on benefits. We're talking about dental benefits, drug plans, and so on and so forth. These things are hideously expensive. As I say, there was a lot of mudraking, there was a lot of accusations and name-calling and so on and so forth through this election, and when you look at the way people voted, it was very polarised. And so central Canada now, Alberta and Saskatchewan, basically there are no Liberal seats, they're all Conservative. BC is a split between the NDP and the Liberals, and Ontario is a split between the Liberals and the Conservatives. But essentially we're looking at a red or blue provinces. You're either one or the other. So again, that remains very divisive. It shows that people are not really getting along very well together. And of course, when you looked at the Facebook pages, oh my God, you know, the shameful posting that was taking place on both sides of the aisle it was pretty provocative. And you could certainly see by the comments that the provocation worked, and it certainly brought home, you know, the differences, the vast differences now that lies, almost a chasm that lies between the Liberal and the Conservative voter. And of course next year we have the 2020 election in the US, and again that is going to be incredibly divisive. People are really basically in one camp or the other, and it's looking right now for all the world like Trump is going to romp that election. Not the least of which is because the Democrats are continuing to completely destroy themselves and discredit themselves in the public eye by, rather than having a platform to push forward into the 2020 election. They are just going after an impeachment of Donald Trump. And the other day, Hillary Clinton comes out and says that Tulsi Gabbard, along with Jill Stein, are Russian agents, don't you know it? Well, I don't know about Jill Stein, but certainly with Tulsi Gabbard, she is a major in the reserves. She is probably one of the most patriotic people of the Democratic nominees. So, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So you factor in all of these issues: money problems, food shortages, high food cost, high energy costs, continuing anger being rolled out from one side or the other on just about every social platform that you can think of, the media playing the whole pull the wool over your eyes game, looking for sensation because they're going down. Newsprint is going out of style so quickly, it's unbelievable. I don't know why anybody would buy a newspaper these days when you can go online virtually for free, and you can go into archives and so on and so forth. You can Google just about anything you want, and most of the major dailies are going to come up. And if there is a paywall, well, like I say, you can go into the archives and you can certainly find just about everything you want right there. And so they are in a state of panic. They are laying off people like crazy, and like I say, they're looking for any sensational story, and they're basically grabbing it and running with it before they have fully fact-checked, and this has led to some terrible, terrible situations. And so right now society seems to be basically being turned completely upside down. And there's a couple of videos that I'm going to be doing later on this evening. One is about the media being controlled by the elites, and the other one is about the whole transgender issue. And all of this is turning our world upside down. These are things that we have never discussed before. They really weren't even on the periphery before, and now all of a sudden they're front and center. Okay, well, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we will talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.